After the woman was put in a metal cage, she was then thrown into the sea. The woman was quickly drowned by the sea, but she came back to life. Then she was drowned and came back to life again. The woman was tortured for 500 years because she was an immortal. She and her sister Andy were the first immortal to appear. They helped many people with their powers. The two sisters should have been loved, but they were captured by the church as witches. They were had, but they would both come back to life after death. The Godfather saw them as symbols of evil, so he came up with a cruel punishment. The women were chained in iron cages and thrown into the sea. They would be trapped inside forever. Luckily, Andy escaped. 500 years have passed. Andy searched for his sister, but couldn't find her. But Andy meets three immortals. They formed a team dedicated to punishing the bad guys. On this day, the team was commissioned by a CIA agent. They needed to rescue a group of kidnapped children, but when they arrived at the rescue site, the room was empty and there were no hostages. But it's a trap. A group of men in black suddenly appeared. The members of the team are fired upon in a frenzy. Bullets hit them with precision. The team was instantly wiped out. After they were out of breath, the men in black prepared to leave, but Andy's eyes began to roll. She soon came back to life, and her partner opened his eyes and ejected the bullet from his wound. The resurrected squad members slowly rose to their feet. The men in black were amazed. They hadn't even reloaded. The squad members were the first to attack. First they shot with their guns, then they pulled out their weapons. Several of them worked together and managed to finish each other off. After the battle they were puzzled. At that moment, they noticed that there were many cameras in the room. It turned out that the agent had just been watching them because their identity as immortal had been discovered, and the operation was just a setup. The immortal's identity had been revealed. They wanted to avoid trouble, so they decided to go into hiding, and they planned to hide for 100 years because by then, the people who knew their identities were already dead. While on the road, they all dreamed of the same person because the immortals all have one power in common. When a new immortal appears, they could all sense it through their dreams. And the person they dreamt about? Nile was a soldier. Nile was killed in action when her throat was slit, but she wakes up in hospital and the wound in her throat has healed. News of Nile's resurrection soon spreads. The rest of the team thought Nile was a freak. They would look at Nile with strange eyes. When the captain found out, he took Nile to be tested. Luckily, Andy arrived and killed the guards. When Nile felt confused, she was knocked out by Andy and taken away. Nile woke up in a car. Nile thought she'd been kidnapped, so she jumped out of the car to escape. Andy stops the car in a hurry. Nile was going faster. Then Nile was shot in the head by Andy. The woman was shot as she ran away, but she came back to life and the wound healed completely. Nile's face is full of confusion. Andy explains to Nile they are immortal beings with the power of immortality. They could come back to life after each death and that their wounds heal quickly. In order for Nile to understand the immortals, Andy took Nile to the secret base, and he also introduced Nile to the other members of the team. This man is Booker. He's 200 years old, and Nikki and Joe have lived much longer. They had been in different armies, and they had killed each other thousands of times in battle. But in the end, they found out that neither would die. Later, they became friends, and Andy, the captain, lived the longest. She didn't even know how long she lived. Then Andy took Nile out for a walk. Andy wanted Nile to join her team, but they suddenly heard a gunshot. By the time they got back to the room, Nikki and Joe had already been taken. Booker was the only one left in the room because Booker was badly wounded. Andy couldn't wake Booker up. Then Andy tapped Booker hard to wake him up, and it was the agent who did it. Andy grabbed his weapon and went after him. First she watched from the shadows, then she fought the enemy alone with a pistol and a long sword. She unleashed a slaughter, the nimble, and he wiped out the entire team. The enemy withdrew immediately, and Andy was unfortunately wounded, but strangely enough, Andy's wounds did not recover this time. Andy thought of a companion whose wound had never healed. In the end, her companion bled to death. It turns out that immortals lose their powers. When they lose their powers, they become ordinary people. Eventually, they die too. The two members were taken to a medical company. The owner decided to study the bodies of the two so as to create an immortality pill. The researcher did not give the two men anesthetic. He then extracted flesh tissue directly from the two men. The agent expressed his displeasure to the boss because he was working with the boss to use the medicine to save patients, but the boss was only interested in making money. He didn't care about the others. The agent realized that he had been used by the boss. By this time, Andy had also identified the location of her companion, so she decided to go and rescue them. But when Andy handed the gun to Nile, Nile refused because she didn't want to kill anyone. Andy didn't push Nile either. Andy gave Nile the gun instead. It was for Nile's protection. Andy then laughed, but when Nile took the gun out, she found that it was empty. That's when she remembered that Booker had given it to Andy. This means that Booker is the mole in their midst. The man is a traitor. While his partner was fighting, he fires a shot at his partner. Andy is very confused and starts questioning Booker, and Booker's reason is simple. He thought the ability of the immortal had kept him alive too long. He wanted to find a way to kill himself, but while Andy's wound is still bleeding and not recovering, Booker feels guilty. That's when the boss appears. He was about to take the two men to be studied by force. The agent asks the boss to let Andy go because Andy had lost his ability to leave forever, but the boss doesn't agree. Luckily, Nile came to the rescue, but as soon as she exited the lift, she was stopped by security. Because Nile had a gun, the guard shot Nile dead. When the security guards went to check on her, Nile suddenly came back to life and killed them. The sound of gunfire soon attracted the others. They attacked Nile like crazy, but Nile was immortal. She finds the lad and saves her companions. But Andy had just lost her immortality and she was betrayed by her companion. Andy became very depressed. That's when Nile began to inspire Andy. Andy had done a lot of good work over the years. Some of the people they saved became famous doctors. Some were great scientists. What they did indirectly helped many people. With Nile's encouragement, Andy's motivation was rekindled, and the other members realized their mission. They became united again and began to fight alongside each other. Despite Andy lost her ability as an immortal, Andy was surrounded by his friends, and they took the bullet for Andy. With a few people working closely together, they eventually took out the enemy. By this time, the boss had taken the lift and run away, so the team immediately went after him. But then the boss appeared out of nowhere. He pointed his gun at Andy. It turned out that the boss had let the others leave on purpose. He was going to die with Andy. Nile took the bullet for Andy. At the critical moment, she jumped off the roof of a 100-meter-high building with the boss in her arms. The boss died instantly, and Nile came back to life, and they found the agents for help. They need to erase all information about the immortals because they want to continue helping people. The agent agrees to make up for his mistake, and Booker, the traitor, had to live alone for 100 years. 100 years before he could meet the members. Booker will have to live with that 100 years of solitude. One day, Booker returned home after a drink. They found someone else in the house, and she was another immortal who had sunk to the bottom of the sea. No one knows how she escaped, but 500 years of torture have blackened her. What will happen to her story?